What is going on, everybody? Hitmonchanning here, back again with another Pokemon trading card game rotation video. That's right, rotation is upon us. It is going to be here at the end of the month, now that we're officially in March. And as I'm finishing editing up the tabletop tourney, I wanted to give you guys a quick little video about the different decks that you can expect to be playing and not playing when rotation comes around. Today, we're taking a look at the decks that survive the 2025 Pokemon TCG rotation. These are going to be all the different decks that can basically continue to function in somewhat of the same way as they do pre-rotation, and this could just be seen as a generally good deck. They're going to beat the meta decks, they're going to be the meta decks, they're going to win games against these decks, and they're still going to be dominant forces in the metagame. Even though they might look slightly different, they're still going to go and have the overall same game plan. Now really quick, guys, I just want to say, check out hitmonchanting.com, get yourself a really cool and awesome playmat. I also have prize packs all the way up to Series 6 on there. I have some singles, I got a bunch of different stuff for you guys to check out. Every single purchase supports me directly and lets me create the content that I do on this channel, so if you could just check me out, I'd appreciate it. Use code Hitmon at PTCGL store, use code Hitmon at Pokemon.gg. All the sponsors are on screen, all their links are in the description. Every single time you use my code, you know, a little Hitmonchanting just kind of gets happy, and he, you know, yeah, so just like support me and stuff, I'd appreciate it. Anyways, we're gonna just go right into these different decks. To start off, Charizard. Charizard is still going to be a very dominant force in the metagame, I feel. This is an example of your kind of standard Charizard EX list right now. I mean, obviously some of the cards are going to change. Like, I have a Canceling Cologne in here. There's the Collapsed Stadium. There's Unfair Stamp instead of Secret Box. There's a lot of different kind of variations of Charizard, as I'm sure you may know. There's no Budew in this list, no Grantry. Anyways, this is kind of a pre-rotation sample, and I do think Charizard EX is going to stay very strong, even though it loses the Stage 2 deck's favorite package of Lumineon, Rotom, and Forest Seal Stone. Other than those cards, the list remains virtually the same. Now we're going into a post-rotation sample, and you can see it's a little bit different here. Obviously, we're still rocking with the Charizard line, the Pidgeot line, and the Dusknoir line, but we do have two copies of Budew in here. You may notice the big cards that we lost are Radzard, Lumineon V, Rotom B, and Forest Seal Stone. Those are the big four that this deck loses, but other than that, the rest are kind of just techie cards. I've opted to go and add a Tatsugiri in here to find some additional supporters, and obviously this list isn't perfect. This is just an example, and I have another example that I'm going to show you as well, but basically this list is kind of just operating on a consistency first basis, and not a lot of different tricks. You have your Turo, you have your Briar, and I think the greatest issue with these stage 2 decks going forward is going to be finding the supporters when you need them. You could play stuff like Pokegear, but I find the Tatsugiri is more consistent. Jamming Tower, I think, is going to be the stadium that you're playing if you're not playing Area 0, even if you do have some tools in your deck, just because I think tools are so much stronger now that Lost Vacuum is rotated out. So this is my first example of a Charizard EX list, but the second example is a Charizard EX Noctowl build, and I think that this example is actually a little bit stronger because you have so many more options to just search exactly what you need whenever you need it. We're running a 4/4 Noctowl line with the 2 Terrapagos as our kind of anchor to set up our Charizards, and then in the late game you can just find whatever you want with your Noctowls and a Charizard EX in play, get some Dusknoir plays going, and then just kind of control the game in that way. You can specifically search for multiple cards every single turn, and your goal is to kind of just establish a Charizard and win the game. Now, obviously, this is taking the kind of Chen Pao approach where you don't want to prize 2 Charizards or else you kind of just lose, but in this case, you do have the chance of taking them off the prizes with Terrapagos as a backup attacker, which you can actually use pretty effectively in this matchup if you establish a full bench and you can charge it up with Infernal Rain. Hitting 240 on just a Pokemon you can throw on the bench is pretty good, especially in the early game when Charizard can kind of lack that damage output. Other than that, this list isn't super crazy. It's got kind of everything that a Charizard player could hope and dream of. But yeah, this is kind of my example of a Charizard list. And the next deck that is going to live is going to be Raging Bolt. Now, Raging Bolt, it's gonna look really different, I think, once we go into the post-rotation kind of metagame, because Raging Bolt, I think, all the turbo decks, for that matter, lose the greatest amount of cards. If you look at this Raging Bolt list, we lose Radiant Greninja, we lose Trekking Shoes, we lose Switch Cart, we lose Pokestop, we lose Lost Vacuum, and the biggest losses here, I think, are Pokestop and Radiant Greninja, because you just lose so much draw power with this deck. You still have your Teal Mask Overpawns, but think about it, you're basically losing an additional 5 cards, plus more, potentially, with Trekking Shoes per turn. So you're losing up to 5, let's even say up to like 7 or 8 or different cards of draw. You're losing that just in, and that's a 1-turn time span. So the deck, I think, is going to become a lot less turbo. Now, you can obviously still take a turbo approach here. Here we have the Latias, we have a Badoo in here to stall our opponent out a little bit, judge for some disruption, but basically we're going for a like turbo slash tank approach where we have a bunch of Pokegears, a bunch of Earthen Vessels, and we have the Pokemon catchers, but I've opted to swap out stadiums for Lively Stadium here, which is going to give our Raging Bolts plus 30 HP, Bravery Charm is going to give it plus 50 HP, and we're just going to make each Raging Bolt we have a monster. And Lively Stadium is also going to be really good because all of our other basic Pokemon, like the Pheasantipede, Squawkabilly, and Latias, all get an extra HP boost, making them harder to just get boss KO'd from our opponent. So that is one way I think you could go about playing Raging Bolt, is actually go and move into a tanky style approach, which is something that is on a lot of, or not on a lot of people's radar, and is a little bit less thought about, I think. But because Raging Bolt's naturally so high HP, naturally so high damage output, you can really just invest your resources into these different kinds of deck lists going forward. Now, the other example of a Raging Bolt deck list is going to be a Noctowl version. You've seen a theme with these two decks already. You see that Noctowl is looking pretty strong. We do have the Area Zero, we have Jamming Tower in here, and then the rest of the list is kind of similar. A really cool addition is Crispin here. Crispin's really nice because it just allows you to power up a Raging Bolt without having energy in the discard, which might be a little bit difficult with the loss of Radiant Greninja, Pokestop, and Trekking Shoes. Now you're going to be able to just power up a Raging Bolt right off the rip. Like, you can search, for example, you can Noctowl for a Crispin and an Earthen Vessel. The Earthen Vessel can get you 2 grass energy. Crispin can go power up that Raging Bolt, and there you go. You're doing 280 damage off of a single Noctowl, which is really, really, really strong. Then again, why rely on draws when you can just search out whatever you want? These lists aren't too crazy right now, but we're gonna get into some wacky stuff. Just you wait. Next list on my chopping block is Archaludon EX. I think Archaludon EX is very, very strong going into post-rotation. Right now, we have Dialga V-Star, my beloved card. I love this card so, so much, but obviously, I don't think this deck is gonna play the same way it does once Dialga V-Star rotates at the past EUIC, which was just, I think, last weekend or 2 weeks ago. We saw a lot of our Archaludon EX lists not play the Dialga V-Star, and I think that was a very interesting choice, but it was also a very deliberate choice because it just allowed you to be so much more consistent in swinging every single turn, using Turo whenever you needed it. And obviously the biggest losses from this list is the Dialga itself, but along with Radiant Greninja and Thornton's a pretty big one too, because it allows you to just put a Dialga out of nowhere. So we're going to see this list change a fair bit going forward into the post-rotation. I've opted to build my list a little bit wacky. I wanted to include a Dunsparce line to give us some draw, because I've tested some of these more turbo decks a little bit, and I found that they do really, really lack a lot of draw power. Even though we're playing 3 Pokegear for research, Tatsugiri in here, we're just ensuring that every single turn we're going to be drawing the cards that we need. And we're still playing the Scoop Up Cyclone in here just because I think it is so, so strong. Other than that, the list just wants to chain our Archaludons as much as possible. I do have the Cycling Road in here, which is just to help you discard energy, less for the draw 1 card, but it just acts as a stadium you can use to bump Area Zero that lets you discard an energy from your hand, and then you get an extra card as a little bonus, because as I was saying, we don't have Radiant Greninja anymore. Now, you could just put another Jamming Tower in here, that's fine as well. I think Jamming Tower, and then you swap the rescue board for a Latias EX could be really good, because just giving your Duraludons free retreat in a pinch is very, very strong, I think. So something to keep in mind, but this is my Archaludon list going forwards. I probably will change it a little bit. I'm going to be featuring all these decks in my videos after rotation happens, just to give you guys a good idea of what you can expect to see. So this is just an idea of a list. Another idea of a list is with the Hops Zacian package. This is the list. You get a little sneak peek here. This is the list I played in the tabletop tournament that's going to be coming out very soon. And the list, overall, the list felt pretty okay. The biggest problem, as I was saying earlier, is that it's so hard to just draw cards. You have Pheasantipity only after you get knocked out, no Greninja, no Pokestop, none of that business. You could put a Squawk in here, which I think the Squawk isn't the worst idea, but you just start to run low on bench space. Even though we have 3 Research, 3 Arven, a Niono, and 3 Pokegear, it becomes really difficult to just draw cards and refill your hand size. So I'm thinking that I think the list is going to need to change a little bit, and it's going to need some sort of draw engine. That's kind of my key takeaway. We're going to need a draw engine in Archaludon. But for now, this is a sneak peek of what a Zacian/Hop or Zacian/Archaludon list could look like, because you can pretty consistently pull off Zacian attacks with this list. Now moving forwards, we have Dragapult EX. I know everyone was waiting. Is Dragapult gonna live? Of course it's gonna live. This deck is absolutely ridiculous. It's still very strong, but as we were talking about earlier, losing the Forest Seal Stone Luminion package is very difficult. This list is, I made this, like I started prepping for this video before Budew came out, so there should be Budews in here, but basically this is kind of similar to what I would be playing. Maybe swap out the Switch and like something else, like an Earthen Vessel for a Budew, and then you have just your regular Dragapult list. But yeah, Dragapult though, while it is really strong right now, I actually don't think it maintains that same level of power going forward, because we actually lose really key cards. Luminion Force Seal is a given, but you don't really think about how we lose Radiant Alakazam. That's a really crucial card to Dragapult's game plan in a lot of matchups, where you swing and spread damage, then move damage from the active, swing again, and take a multi-prize. And then you can, obviously we combine that with Dusknoir, but without Radiant Alakazam, the math fixing becomes much more difficult and much easier for your opponent to play around. So I don't necessarily think that Dragapult is going to be the top #1 meta deck going forward. I do think it'll be up there, and I do think it'll be a threat, but I don't think it will be as devastating to play against. And another big loss this deck faces is Lance. Lance is very tough, because now you have to use the likes of Jacques, or you have to use the new Brock supporter. I forget what Brock does, but it's like you get like either 2 basics or an evolution Pokemon. Jacques is just get 2 evolution Pokemon, but it becomes kind of tough to set up under those Budew lock board states, because you don't have a one-size-fits-all solution anymore. So, and you can't even just fetch your Pokemon out with your supporters out with Luminion, so you're really reliant on drawing into your supporters. Going forward, I think the list really starts to rely on TM Evo, and then we're using Budew in those situations where we can't use TM Evo. Again, though, we do have the 2 Jacques in here. I am rocking with the Tatsugiri to help us find those supporters, because we don't have Luminion, and Rescue Board, and everything else here is kind of self-explanatory. I do have the exchange ticket in case we prize our key pieces in the Sparkling Crystal, or we prize some aspect of the Dusknoir line, or a Fez, or something like that. The rest of the list, again, seems pretty straightforward. The only thing I'd want to throw in here is maybe a Stadium. I'm just not sure which one. Potentially some Artisan, just to add some consistency under Budew, but just let me know what you think which Stadium should be in this list. Now, going forwards, we also have Gholdengo EX, and personally, I am the most excited for Gholdengo going forward in the Journey Together post-rotation meta. Right now, Gholdengo does seem like it loses a lot. We have Radiant Greninja, which is going to be a really tough loss for this list, because you can no longer Cypher Maniac Radiant Greninja draw, or you can't Cypher Maniac Pokestop draw, and those are really key pieces of this deck. It's why this deck can draw so many cards. It's why this deck is able to take those massive knockouts that you keep seeing, because it just gets a insanely large hand. I don't remember whose list this one was. I did just net deck it, so I'll put the link in the description. I think it was like top 3 EUIC. We have a really crazy list going forwards, where we're going to be really focusing on that Arven TM Evo setup, and we also have the Crispin in here to let us use and power up a Gholdengo and a Monkey Dory in one turn, because relying on this Monkey Dory is going to be really key, I think, to the future success of Gholdengo, using that stage 1 speed combined with that stage 1 tank in a way that will let you just continuously keep your Gholdengos alive longer than they should be. We also have the brand new Levincia Stadium, which is really, really good in letting us get additional energies back. For example, we can put the stadium down. Under Badoo, we can get 2 lightning back from the discard pile, or we can even just use an SER plus Levincia, and that's going to be a solid 300 damage right there, which is going to be an insane way to just get energies back into play so much easier. We're really relying on TM Evo here because we lack that draw, but if you want a list that continues to have that draw, we have something insane that I cooked up here with the Togekiss line. Now, I really think that this Precious Gift Togekiss is super underutilized in Gholdengo because we can already play the Wonderkiss Togekiss here, which will let us take an extra prize card on a coin flip. We can play this Togekiss with Precious Gift, which stops us from getting, like, you know, after we take a huge knockout with SER, then we can refill our hand with the Precious Gift ability, forcing our opponent to Iono us. And this is another way where you can kind of work with Gholdengo's big tanking potential, is because you can force your opponent to either boss or Iono you, which means that we have the Fez, we have the Squawk, and they might not be able to target one of those down. They might be forced to just swing into a Gholdengo, not KO it, further giving you an advantage. This is a home-cooked deck right here. I'm really interested to see how this plays out. The Squawk is a very interesting card. You don't see a whole lot here, but I think it really might be necessary in Gholdengo going forward, just because sometimes you have those terrible hands, and you just need that extra 6-card dig in order to get Buddy Poffins and establish your board, because your draw engine is your attacker in this case, and it's gonna be tough to just naturally have Buddy Poffins in hand turn 1 if you don't have any other way to get Pokemon into play. So this is kind of the Gholdengo list I'm going to be working with. I'll probably add a Levincia in here. I'll try and find some space, but for now, I'm really liking this idea. Now, the other deck that I think lives is Ceruledge EX, because you'll see that the list doesn't really change a whole lot going from pre to post rotation. The things that it loses, common now, Greninja, Pokestop, but when we go on over to post rotation, it kind of just switches to add the cycling roads in. Extra energy discard is something that I think this deck's really gonna need. We're still rocking with the Noctowl engine. I think that's really good. Have that Badoo for specific sudden item lock moments that we might need, and that's the list. It's nothing crazy. Now we are gonna move on to Purgatory. Those were the decks that live, but what decks might almost live? They have a chance to reach their former glory, but they still need to prove themselves. And these are the lists that really lose key pieces, but they could still become meta threats when the right player gets a hold of them and cooks up a crazy idea. First one, Roaring Moon EX. Roaring Moon EX is going to be a very difficult deck to, like, make work, because look at all the things it loses. Obviously Raining Greninja, obviously Pokestop, obviously Trekking Shoes, but also Dark Patch makes this deck feel way worse. Thankfully, we have some sort of solution, which is not ideal, but might be able to work, in End's Zoroark, where we can use End's PP up and energy switch to kind of hopefully achieve a similar situation, albeit with a lot more cards needed. However, and Zoroark also just has the trait ability to help us draw some cards along the way, so we might be able to kind of successfully be a Roaring Moon deck yet again. Now, something that is worth considering in here is the End's Castle Stadium card, because it will allow your Zoroarks to retreat for free. I do have Cycling Road in here. Again, I really think Cycling Road is not a bad stadium going forward, because it's literally just of the fact of it discarding energy. It's not even like that you get to draw a card. It's just that you can discard energy very easily with it, because we have Earthen Vessel, we have Ultra Ball, and that's kind of it for discard right now. We don't have that just board sitter of Radiant Greninja. So this is kind of where I think Roaring Moon is. Will it be good? Will it not? You're going to be the one to find out. In a similar vein, we have Ancient Box. I do think Ancient Box is better than Roaring Moon going forward, but I do think that it's still going to be a very tough sell for players losing Radiant Greninja and losing Pokestop. Again, because this deck wants cards in the discard, losing Pokestop is really bad, and this has kind of been my solution. A lot more of a teched out approach where we still rely on Tatsugiri in combination with like Rescue Board and or P.E.K.K.A Run, and we try and hit harder with the Binding Mochi instead of relying on more cards discarded. This is going to be a list that I think really relies on early exploratory Force Guidance, later Sada's Vitality, so it might not be able to swing as soon as turn 1 going second, but nonetheless, I do think this deck has a shot to work. Now, we also have Miraidon EX in this category. This is a pre-rotation sample of Miraidon, and, you know, I think it was my friend Luigi, who you may remember from the tabletop tournaments, who said that this deck doesn't lose a lot. But it loses Raikou, Rotom, Raichu, Radiant Greninja, Lumineon, in this case Irida, Switch Cart, Force Seal, Heavy Ball. This deck loses actually an insane amount of cards that make it really, really good. Losing two of its main attackers in a Raikou and Raichu is really bad. Two of its main support Pokemon in a Rotom and Lumineon, and Radiant Greninja being the third one, is also just devastating. This list plays Irida, but you could opt to play the full for Arven. Switch Card's also a pretty bad loss as well, because it allows you to really swing those like math fixing matchups like Dragapult into your favor more so, and the list just becomes wildly different. Now, this list is a home-cooked list. It might look a little wacky, but it's going to need to have a chance to prove itself. Right now, this is actually kind of more of a Pikachu EX focus list than it is a standard Miraidon list. We do have the new Tapu Koko in here as an attacker to just get some easy, cheap damage off, but the list that I'm rocking with right now, I think the only thing it needs is an Earthen Vessel. I think we should throw one of those in there for sure, but it's kind of more reliant on Magneton. We also should probably put a counter catcher in here too, maybe instead of the 2 judges, but it's more reliant on using Magneton to power up your really hard-hitting Pokemon rather than using generators to get your cheap attacking Pokemon, because we don't really have a lot of lightning Pokemon, lightning basics, that are as strong as Raikou or as strong as Raichu. So we're gonna have to kind of use Pikachu to be your heavy hitter. We use Tapu Koko in place of the Raikou, and we're more focused on using Magneton to be consistent, and then we just swing with Iron Hand as much as possible. Same game plan for Miraidon, just a little more difficult because you lose so many of those key consistency cards. And that is the list. And that is all the lists for that matter. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know if you wanted me to do another kind of this video. I really did enjoy putting this one together and making it. I do want to go through a video where all the decks that I think are no longer viable at all. So if you're planning on playing something or you're starting to build something, then you can know maybe your deck just won't be viable in a couple weeks time. And then I want to go through a video of a bunch of new decks. There are a lot of new decks that are going to be coming out in the Journey Together meta, more than you may think. It's so much so that we need a video for them. And after all that, thank you so much for watching. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and comment down below what do you think of my lists. What do you think of this, all these different decks being at the stage that they are going to be. Rotation's always an exciting time. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that jazz. I post multiple videos every single week during normal time. I'm doing school right now, so it's been a little bit of a challenge, but I hope this video ties you over to the tabletop tournament. Until next time, Hitmonchanning is out.